Factory Obscura, we're based in Oklahoma City, and we've been around since 2017. And so we've created a number of immersive, interactive experiences. Some of them were created to be temporary, and some we designed to be more permanent. Mixtape is our permanent year-round experience that you can visit in downtown Oklahoma City. It's about 6,000 square feet. And the whole space is 360-degree world that is all designed and handcrafted by our team of artists. Everything is meant to be touched and interactive and explored. And the more you explore, the more you are rewarded with discovering all kinds of fun little details and surprises that we have hidden inside the experience for you.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman, and today I am joined by Kelsey Karper. Kelsey, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Good. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So Kelsey is the co-founder and director of Logistical Creativity for Factory Obscura, which is a collaborative company creating immersive art experiences. Factory Obscura works to build economic models that supports artists and arts education based in Oklahoma City. Their permanent mixtape experience operates year-round with immersive art, live performances, and events. Sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is never dull, that's for sure.
Yeah, because listen, it's funny. My last podcast that we did, we had another artist on, and I said to them is art and creativity is as far away from my brain as possible. I'm an accountant. You're talking to an accounting firm right now. So our brains work totally.
I don't know. Podcasting takes some creativity.
Yeah, maybe perhaps. Yes. I don't have a script. I don't have a script or anything. It's all ad-libbed. No, it is ad-libbed. But I'll rephrase it. Art and creativity is something that, I lack the skill in. And for the most part, I kind of lack a lot of interest in going to the traditional art gallery and looking at work and staring at something and interpreting and so forth. But then I look at your thing, and this is the kind of thing that would actually potentially draw someone like me who doesn't necessarily have the interest in a little bit. So why don't you kind of tell us, what it's all about and kind of how it got there?
Well, I mean, what you're saying is actually one of my favorite things about doing this kind of work is that, in more kind of traditional, more formal arts venues or institutions, a lot of people can feel sort of excluded from that, or that it's not really for them because it's not their thing. They're not really art people. So I love to see when people who are sort of self-described as not really art people come into a Factory Obscura experience or any immersive art experience and realize that art actually is for them, and to sort of open the door for appreciation and understanding of art through this very fun, interactive, fully immersive world that probably isn't what most people would expect when you think of like an art museum.
Right. So let's break it down. So I know on my honeymoon, we went to Paris, and I know I had to spend some time at museums. And listen, I'm not going to lie, it was cool to see the Mona Lisa in person because if you asked me to name pieces of art, that would be the first one I'd name, and maybe I could come up with some names if I think about a few others. So it was cool to see that in person. But besides that one room, the rest of it, I'm like, what are we doing? So that experience to me was not, as you used, immersive. And that was for me very like, okay, when are we done? So let's talk about, you said you love hearing someone like me. So let's talk about what is your experience, and let's see if you can, if you convince me, you can convince anyone. So let's go for it.
Yeah. So Factory Obscura, we're based in Oklahoma City, and we've been around since 2017. And so we've created a number of immersive, interactive experiences. Some of them were created to be temporary, and some we designed to be more permanent. So Mixtape is our permanent year-round experience that you can visit in downtown Oklahoma City. It's about 6,000 square feet, and the whole space is 360-degree world that is all designed and handcrafted by our team of artists. Everything is meant to be touched and interactive and explored. And the more you explore, the more you are rewarded with discovering all kinds of fun little details and surprises that we have hidden inside the experience for you.
Can you give me one example? Without ruining it, obviously.
Oh, of a fun detail?
Give me like a hidden thing that I'm supposed to discover, perhaps, and maybe like, wow, that was cool.
Okay, so one of the rooms inside the experience, we refer to it as the teen femme bedroom, and it looks um, like the dream 90s bedroom.
Okay.
like every young person wanted to have this bedroom, right? And it's one of the most popular spaces in the experience because there's something familiar about it and comforting, I think.
Yeah.
And so people feel very drawn to it. And if you spend enough time in that space, you'll find that there are a number of little details. For example, there's a diary in the room that if you take the time to read it, it'll lead you to other things in the experience. And then there are also little artifacts in the room that actually came from the artists who created the space. And so we all brought in, pieces from our own teenage years and embedded them into the experience.
It sounds somewhat similar to an escape room, meaning, like you said, the diary will kind of point you in a different direction, not to solve a riddle. And obviously you can get out of your room whenever you want, but it sounds like that kind of, thought-provoking experience, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there are definitely some overlapping qualities. Escape rooms are also immersive and interactive. Our experience doesn't necessarily have like a mystery you're trying to solve or an overarching narrative that you're supposed to pick up on. We really let the participants define that for themselves. But yeah, there's definitely some if you like escape rooms, you'll probably also like immersive.
How long for like the mixtape thing you talk about? Like how long is that experience for somebody? Is it as long as you want it to be, or is it?
It's totally self-guided. You can move at your own pace. Most people spend about 45 minutes to an hour in there. We've definitely seen people spend much longer. We call those folks the deep divers. They really
they want to look at every little detail.
Every little detail. We love it. But about an hour is enough time to really fully absorb the whole experience.
So taking a step back, so you obviously, I'm going to guess, had a passion for art your entire life, and you have one other co-founder, correct? It was two of you?
There are actually 5 of us.
Oh, okay.
Co-founded Factory Obscura together.
So how did it come about?
Yeah, so it came about, really it started with what was at the time a hypothetical conversation.
Right.
Just friends talking over dinner and drinks about ideas. And
see, drinks get dangerous. There you go. You said drinks.
Right. Yeah, it could actually lead somewhere.
Yeah.
The question came up among the group, what would it look like if you were to build a playground that was designed for adults?
Okay.
And so this was just, as I said, a hypothetical question that if you were going to build a playground for adults that would encourage people to move and be playful and be active as they grow, what would that even look like?
Right.
And so we started having that conversation. It just kept revisiting it, started looking at other models that exist out in the world. Is anybody doing this out there? And of course, as we started looking and talking, the idea started getting bigger and bigger and started to become more real. Like, this is actually a thing we want to create in the world. And it doesn't exist exactly in the way that we're imagining it. And so we just started having these planning meetings about what this could potentially turn into. And this was in early 2017. And then eventually decided, let's build a proof of concept of this. And excuse me, we assembled an artist team and they all jumped in right away. We started designing and planning and building. We spent 3 months designing, 3 months building, and opened our first immersive experience called Shift in November of 2017. And we really, as I said, it was a proof of concept. We wanted to see, could we build this kind of thing that we're thinking about? And are there artists here locally who want to build that kind of work? And is there an audience for it? Will people show up?
Well, that's
And
at the end of the day, that's what matters. It's a business.
yeah, and in that first project, it was open 24 hours a week. We had gallery hours in about a 1,200 square foot space. And in 3 months, we had 20,000 visitors come through the door.
Big number.
And we had hoped to get 5,000. Kind of our stretch goal was 7. And then we ended up with 20,000 people coming through, and it just blew us away. And that proved our concept that people want this. It is work that we can make in the way that we are dreaming about. And there's potential to go bigger.
Yeah.
And so that first project really proved that to us, and gave us the courage and the experience to go forward and to continue building. And so from there, we started developing our business model. Like, how do we take this idea and turn it into really an economic engine that can be self-sustainable and can also support artists in a new way for our community that can pay them thriving wages and continue to support them through the life of the project. And so we did a series of temporary projects before we landed at Mixtape as our permanent home. And those temporary projects helped us to build that business model. You know, we started selling tickets and, figured out kind of how the structure of that would work and how we would operate something like this. And then luckily had a great partner who invested in us to build Mixtape, our first permanent space.
Now, do you get a lot of repeat customers?
We do, actually. Yeah, we have a membership program even.
That was my next question. I know a lot of museums have that. Yeah,
we do. We have a membership program, just like a lot of museums do, that includes unlimited admission for a year. And we see a lot of families who like to become members because their kids are asking over and over again to come back.
It's great.
And being a member makes it easy for them to say yes. Let's drop by for even 15, 20 minutes and go see what's new.
Right.
We're always adding new things. We get a lot of repeat visitors and locals who love to bring friends who are coming to town to show off what can exist in Oklahoma City. And people are often surprised and delighted to find something like Factory Obscura.
Listen, I'm from New Jersey, so there's plenty of jokes you can make about New Jersey. So I'll start by saying that. But when people think of like the Oklahomas of the world, Nebraskas, they think it's a hick, where there's no vibrance to it. It's just, it's land. And that's just the image.
Tree in general is often just overlooked as a place where art and creativity and culture are happening. But I actually think that being in Oklahoma is one of the reasons why something like Factory Obscura can exist. For one thing, the kind of work that we make requires a lot of space. And ideally affordable space.
No doubt.
And Oklahoma has plenty of space. That's one thing that is working to our advantage. But also we have the community here that is, in my opinion, very special and rare, that our arts community and creative community really is very supportive of each other. There is not a sense of like competition. Everyone wants to see each other succeed. And there's
that's what they say to you behind your back. They're like, how can we ruin this? No, I'm
there's a real sense of community that I think doesn't exist in every city or every state.
I think there's probably a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
It's really special. And I think it's part of why we are able to do what we do and to succeed at that.
Yeah. Now, I've never been to Oklahoma City, but I do, in my mind, I think of Oklahoma City as probably one of the more vibrant cities in Oklahoma. And I view it as almost like a big city. I think of Oklahoma City as a big city. You talked about needing a lot of space. Are you kind of situated like in the middle of a lot of other stuff? Or are you kind of isolated a little bit so you're able to get the size?
Great location. We are in downtown Oklahoma City, right off of a major highway, just a couple blocks off the highway exit. But we're not so far into downtown that it's, I think, intimidating to some folks who don't know how to navigate downtown. And so we have a great location, and on our block it's just filled with local restaurants and And the whole neighborhood really is a destination, which work
Wow.
to our advantage. That's another thing that, a lot of immersive experiences in other parts of the country don't have that neighborhood destination because they end up kind of on the fringes of town where they
Yeah.
can get a warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so we feel really lucky that we're
Yeah.
part of a neighborhood.
And I'm sure you kind of get some just people who weren't planning on going to your place, but are
Yeah.
doing shopping or are doing, going to a restaurant and say, hey, this place looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
It is hard to ignore.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's large and it's covered in very brightly
Right.
colored murals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're just passing by, you cannot ignore it. And everyone wants to know what is going on in there.
Listen, you always say about, books, sometimes people read a book because the cover catches their eye.
Yeah.
We have where I live about 20 minutes from us. I'm sure you've heard of the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, their headquarters are right near me. And their headquarters is a castle.
Awesome.
It's literally a castle. So not
Love
that you're
it.
ever it's not a place obviously where you show up just to visit, but every time you drive by it, you turn your head and you take a look at it because,
Yeah.
it's not your typical, four wall
Yeah.
building with windows and, all that kind of stuff.
You
So
can
it's
see there's something magic happening in there. Yeah,
you want to see more. Like if that's what the outside looks like, only imagine what's going on inside.
exactly. Yeah, our building has the same effect on people, and we want it to, of course, attract people
Yeah.
and allow people to have a cool experience even on a day when we might be closed.
Right.
And so they can experience the outside of the building. We actually have a giant interactive boom box on the front of our building. It's about 20 feet wide.
Nice.
And you can press the buttons and play with the boom box 24 hours a day.
That's neat.
So the whole building is an experience, even on the sidewalk.
So now that you've kind of, taken, OKC by storm, is this something now you think about, hey, can we leverage this elsewhere? And I know you guys are probably all local, but is it something you thought about finding, partners somewhere else and seeing if it has, legs somewhere else?
We have done some temporary projects in other cities. We did a project in Northwest Arkansas a few years ago. We also did a project in an art museum in Norman, Oklahoma, which is just about half an hour from Oklahoma City.
That's where the university is, correct?
Yes, yeah, it was on the campus of University of Oklahoma, and so we are always open to doing those kinds of projects. But we're really, in terms of us operating a permanent space, we're very much committed to being in Oklahoma City and expanding from where we are. So we do have plans to grow. We have, as I said, Mixtape is permanent. It's a 6,000 square foot experience. But we have room to expand on that. And that will be our next step in our growth, is to expand in the location that we are currently in.
With some businesses, I'm not saying it's the case with yours, and obviously I don't know the market down there at all. Do you ever concern yourself with, okay, this is great, people love it, but because we're kind of limited to one location, is our clientele gonna, go dry or begin to decrease? Yes, you have your memberships, which is helpful, but do you concern yourselves with the non-members, like the non-hardcore fans, that they're going to go one time and like, oh, that was awesome, but okay, did it, been there, done that, let's go, ice skating, kind of thing with the family?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we're thinking about that all the time from the business perspective.
Yeah.
But what we have seen so far is that a bigger challenge for us is actually fully saturating our market.
Yeah.
That every day we have local people come in who say, I just heard about this.
Yeah.
Or I was just walking by and wanted to know, what is this place?
Yeah, right.
And they live in Oklahoma City and had not heard of us, which is frustrating on one hand.
I was going to say, okay, so that raises the next question.
But on the other hand, it's encouraging because it means that there is an untapped market, as well as we are doing already, that there are more people to reach. And Oklahoma City also has a high level of tourism that has been growing in recent years. And so we have millions of visitors coming to our city every year. And so we feel like our challenge is really just how do we reach those folks and make sure that they know we are here.
It's an interesting back and forth because one, you could say, well, wait a minute, why is our name not getting out there
Yeah.
as much as we'd possibly like? But a big plus to that is, like you said, wow, imagine what will happen when more people do hear about it. We now have suddenly a whole new market.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic. Now with I know generally people who are into art and people who are into sports might not necessarily be the biggest overlap. I'm sure there's some, obviously.
There is a lot of overlap there. Yeah.
And so is the growth and success of your NBA team. And I don't know the proximity of where they play, but obviously OKC, I
Yeah. They're
imagine a lot
very
of people.
close to us. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously they've become a very exciting team. They're, one of the best teams in the league right now.
Hmm.
I imagine there's opportunities for you to kind of leverage that extra OKC traffic.
Yes.
Have you thought about how to utilize that, doing things on weekends of games or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, we're downtown, and the arena where the Thunder play it's also downtown, just a few blocks from us. And so we're always trying to figure out how do we capture those audiences who are coming for Thunder games and for concerts
Yeah.
and all kinds of events happening in that
Yeah.
arena. Um, and we do see definitely a surge in attendance when there are big things happening there.
Sure.
Our city is doing a great job of really promoting what the city has to offer.
Mhm.
And then also, like, our downtown a few years ago put in a streetcar, and so you can hop on the streetcar from the
That's
arena,
nice.
and it'll bring you right to our neighborhood. And so things like that, I think, are
Yeah.
really the opportunities that we have related to the Thunder and the arena.
Yeah. That's interesting because, it's true. For us, I'm about a half hour, 45 minutes out of New York City. And I'm like an hour out of Philly. So I'm kind of in the middle of two big markets.
Yeah,
But oftentimes, if we're going in for something, while we're there, we're going to do something else.
of course.
I
Make
mean,
the
we're going to go in
most.
for a game. Maybe we're going to go to dinner somewhere, not just grab a hot dog at the game. If we're going in for theater, we'll make a reservation here.
Mhm.
You want to leverage the time that you're, taking to get there. You might as well make the most out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing our neighborhood has going for it is it's one of the last neighborhoods downtown with free parking.
I
And
was about
so
to ask you about that. Yeah.
people often park in our neighborhood and then use the streetcar or just walk
Yeah.
to go to their next thing. And so they'll have dinner or drinks or come to have an immersive experience before they head off to their next destination.
And that's huge because going into the city, it's such a turnoff.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find parking on the street,
Yeah.
which could just infuriate you. And if you decide you're finally going to give up, which most of us do, and you pay for parking,
Yep.
that's another 40, $50. So if you are a family and you're going to have to feed four and you have to pay admission for four, and then you're going to get snacks for four, that extra $50,
It all adds up.
it all adds up. It becomes, a day out could easily become an $800, $1,000 a day. And that's what we hear a lot here. And obviously New York markets might be a little different than OKC in terms of pricing. But now a family can't afford to go to a baseball game anymore just because how expensive the snacks are with the parking, with the tickets, and it's hard. And that's why you see kids say they go to like one game a year. It's like their big treat because, back in the day, you were able to go to 4 or 5 games a year because it was cost friendly.
Right. Yeah. So we try and make the most of that as, our neighborhood is very accessible geographically, but also financially.
So how do you see the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years
Yeah.
of it evolving?
The next 6 months are really our busiest time of year. It kicks off with spring break this weekend.
Oh yeah. My daughter's driving home from college right now, so I get it. Yeah.
And then all the way through, Labor Day into September is kind of our peak season. And so this season will really determine a lot of what comes next for us in terms of growth. But we are actively working on plans for our next phase of expansion. So hoping to be, working with a team of artists designing and then also seeking funding for those expansion plans.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, what I like about what you've said like several times is you guys, you're kind of waiting to hear from your customers and they're kind of driving to an extent, obviously, how you're bringing it forward. So you're listening to them, what they want to see and so forth, instead of saying, oh, we know what's best. Well, no, you know what's best because you're going to rely on the people that are going to support you
Yeah.
and pay for it. I think a lot of businesses sometimes struggle with that because, oh, I'm the expert, I'm the chef, I know what people want to eat,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, instead of saying, okay, what do people really want out of the experience?
Yeah, it's been interesting, since we started Factory Obscura, the five of us who are co-founders, of course, all have experiences that we're bringing with us to the
Yeah.
table, but none of us have done anything exactly like this. Most people haven't.
Yeah, right, of course.
And so it's been a huge learning experience. And I think that that's one of the things that we do really well is that we learn and we pivot based on what we have learned.
Yeah.
And we, I think, are in a unique position in that we opened our permanent home mixtape in September of 2019. And so we were just 6 months into having our doors open when we had to close for the pandemic.
Sure.
And that was a scary time. We didn't know if we were going to survive that closure because we were just getting our feet under us. And we were closed for 6 months. And ultimately, we were able to reopen and kind of gradually rebuild our audience. And while that was incredibly challenging to go through,
Yeah.
I feel like we were at kind of a perfect point in our growth to endure it and to come out on the other side better for it. And so we have been able to grow kind of incrementally in ways that are very sustainable. And despite the pandemic, and in some ways, because of the lessons learned through that experience.
And interesting. How do you, and I know you have social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and so forth. How are you, or are you at all using that as a way to help develop your audience and to grow your interest?
Yes, constantly, all the time. Social media is our primary tool for communicating with our audience. Of course, we have an email newsletter, but it just doesn't connect in the way that social media does. Of course, we all know that now. And so we're always trying to find new ways to reach new audiences through that as well. But that is absolutely one of our primary ways that we stay connected with our audience who are scattered all over the world.
Yeah. Interesting. So before we wrap up, so obviously you've had an art passion your entire life, put it that way. I couldn't think of the word. And obviously this is a great experience that you guys kind of, came up with and so forth. When you were, growing up and in the early part of your careers, and you went around, I'm sure you loved to see different museums and to view different things. What were some of the highlights for you? Like, what were some of the places that you really, because I imagine some people leave this, and I'm asking you a question a really long twist away. I'm sure people leave your experience and it's instilled in their head because it was so unique or they connected to it in a really positive way. What were some of those experiences for you from an art perspective growing up that still stick with you to this day?
Yeah, that is one of my other favorite things is seeing how it can really impact people and stick with them over time. And I think about when I was a kid, was interested in art and being creative. If I had experienced something like this, how that would have changed my worldview and my idea of what is possible for my own self as a creative person. What are the opportunities for me in my life, and so I love having kids come through and have that experience at a young age. And when I think back to my early experiences, things that kind of opened my eyes to that, one that I always come back to is when I was about 9 or 10, my gran took me to see a live performance of Les Miserables.
Okay.
It was like a touring Broadway production.
Sure.
City. And I had never seen anything produced on that scale before, as such a young person. And it impacted me in a big way. And it was, I think, the first time I can remember consciously realizing that art can make people feel things. And can cause you to have thoughts that can change your mind about your view. And that was the first time I kind of connected those dots. In a very literal way, oh, I am feeling something as a result of this performance. And that is a power that you can leverage. And I think that I've been kind of chasing that experience since then of like, how do we use this power that is intrinsic to the arts to do good in our world and the ripple effects that that can have. And so I think that's what we're trying to do with Factory Obscura and with all immersive art experiences. Is like, if we can give people an opportunity in a space that is safe for them to explore their emotions, and to process those, and to share that experience with other people in a way that then has us connected to each other in a way that we weren't before, the ripple effects of that on society and humanity could be huge. And so that, I think, is really what we're striving for ultimately. Yes, we're creating these really beautiful, fun, creative experiences, but then what is the impact of that on people who participate in it? And that is really, I think, the real motivation behind everything that
makes sense. Yes. One last question for you. So again, from an art lover perspective, what's on your bucket list in terms of what's something you'd want to experience, whether it's traveling to Paris to see a museum, whether it's a show that you've always heard about that you would just love to be in the audience for? Like, what's the things that you think about? Like,
I feel like I have FOMO all the time whenever I am trying to keep up with what, especially others in the immersive field are doing. And because they often are temporary, right? They're not always permanent. And so there have been so many experiences and performances that I have missed because they only existed for a short time. Right now, something that is on my list is there is a new Meow Wolf location that just opened a few months ago in Houston that I really am hoping to get to see. And then there are always a lot of interactive, immersive, performance-based works happening in New York that I also would really love to get to see.
Have you been to New York before?
I have been to New York. It's been several years, and there's so much happening there now that is so new that I got.
You can go for 3-4 days and just pack yourself with like 3 or 4 things a day. You know, we've gone in like seen like, you know, show, dinner, show, you know, kind of thing, and you know,
so much to see,
so much to see and do. So listen, this is really interesting. Like I said, it's kind of something, you know, I like talking to people who have something different, you know, and this is definitely something that's different. So. Talk about briefly how people can find you on the different, you know, social media platforms.
So we are factoryobscura.com and we are at Factory Obscura on all social media platforms. We'd love to have folks follow us and learn more about what we do.
Awesome. Kelsey, I appreciate the time. Very, very interesting stuff. And I wish you guys nothing but growth and continued success with this.
Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.